there are famous people. And then there are the ones who owned a decade. The ones who didn't just trend for a week, they shaped culture, broke records, survived the internet, and somehow came out bigger every single time. In the last 10 years, we've seen stars rise and crash overnight, but a select few, they were simply untouchable. Here are the 10 celebrities who proved that in the most competitive era of pop culture history, some people just can't be stopped. Starting at number 10, Zendaya. If you told someone in 2014 that the girl from Shake It Up would become the most respected young actress in Hollywood, they would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened. Zendaya didn't just grow up in front of the cameras, she redefined what growing up in Hollywood could look like. Her role as Rue in Euphoria wasn't just a performance, it was a statement. She won her first Emmy at 24, making her the youngest drama actress to ever take home that award. Then she did it again. Her fashion alone could fill a separate video. She's been called the most stylish person on the planet so many times it stopped being a compliment and started being a fact. And the Challengers era? She proved she could carry a film on pure screen presence. Zendaya isn't a celebrity, she's a cultural institution in the making. But if Zendaya dominated Hollywood, the next name on this list conquered something the entire industry underestimated for years. Number 9, Bad Bunny. Latin music had always been massive, but Bad Bunny made the rest of the world pay attention whether they wanted to or not. This guy broke Spotify's all-time streaming records 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row. He released albums in Spanish, refused to make English crossover tracks to appeal to mainstream American audiences, and still became one of the most streamed artists on the planet. His Un Verano Sin Ti album wasn't just a Latin hit, it was nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys, a first for a Spanish-language record. He sold out stadiums across 6 continents. He dabbled in acting, appearing in the Fast and Furious franchise, and taking on a WWE storyline that people genuinely lost their minds over. Bad Bunny didn't cross over to the mainstream, he made the mainstream come to him. And while he was pulling that off, a teenager from California was busy becoming the biggest name in the entire music industry. Number 8, Billie Eilish. Nobody arrived the way Billie Eilish arrived. She recorded Ocean Eyes in her brother's bedroom at 13 years old. By the time she was 18, she had swept the Grammys, album, record, song, and Best New Artist in a single night. No artist had ever done that before, and certainly not no one that young. But what made Billie untouchable wasn't just the music, it was the honesty. She talked openly about depression, body dysmorphia, and the pressure of growing up in public at a scale very few people ever have to face. When she changed her image from oversized streetwear to something more fitted, the internet had opinions. She responded by making it part of her art. The Happier Than Ever era felt like a direct conversation with everyone who had projected something onto her. Then Hit Me Hard and Soft proved she could reinvent herself again without losing what made her special. Billie Eilish doesn't follow trends, she ends them. Speaking of ending things, the next person on this list ended her own contract dispute in the most savage way the music industry has ever seen. Number 7, Dua Lipa. In 2017, Dua Lipa had a few decent songs and a lot of skeptics. 3 years later, she had released one of the best-reviewed pop albums of the entire decade. Future Nostalgia dropped right at the start of the pandemic, when nobody knew if live music would ever come back, and it still became a global anthem for survival and celebration. The disco influences, the confident production, the pure fun of it, people needed it, and she delivered. Her world tour became one of the highest-grossing runs of that era. There were rumors swirling about her personal life constantly, her relationships were tabloid catnip, and she navigated all of it while keeping her focus sharp. There was also a lawsuit from a funk band called Article Sound System, who claims that levitating was lifted from their work. Reports suggest the case was eventually dismissed, but it showed that when you're that big, everyone wants a piece. Dua didn't flinch, she just kept performing to sold-out arenas across the world. But if Dua survived the noise, the next person on this list generated more noise than almost anyone in modern music history. Number 6, Drake. Love him or not, you can't talk about the last decade of music without spending a significant amount of time on Drake. He racked up more Billboard Hot 100 entries than any artist in the chart's history. He created an entire subgenre of emotional hip-hop that spawned 1,000 imitators. He built OVO sound, pushed Toronto onto the global cultural map, and made it normal for rappers to have feelings. But Drake's decade wasn't without turbulence. Rumors about ghostwriting followed him for years, with producers and artists suggesting that some of his most celebrated work had help he never credited. It's been said that the controversy never fully went away. And then came 2024, the most public rap feud in recent memory. Kendrick Lamar didn't just challenge Drake, he dismantled him, at least in the court of public opinion. Not Like Us became a cultural moment. Drake fired back, the whole world watched. The feud's full fallout may still be playing out, but here's the thing, Drake was still charting throughout all of it. The controversy didn't end his decade, it became part of it. And while Drake was making noise, the woman at number 5 was busy building something that no artist had ever attempted before. Number 5, Taylor Swift. There is no polite way to describe what Taylor Swift did in the last few years. She announced a tour in 2023, and it became the highest-grossing concert tour in the history of live music. Not pop music, all music, ever. The Eras Tour grossed over $1 billion and generated so much economic activity that central banks in multiple countries actually commented on it. Before that, she had spent years fighting for her masters after her original record label sold her catalog to a private equity manager she had publicly feuded with. Her response was to re-record every single album from scratch and redistribute them directly to fans, a move so calculated and effective that it's now studied in business schools. The cultural saturation was unlike anything since Beatlemania. You either loved it or you were exhausted by it, and either way, you were talking about her. Taylor Swift didn't just have a great decade, she may have had the greatest decade any solo artist has ever had. But there is one woman who spent this decade proving you don't even need to release music to be the most powerful name in entertainment. Number 4, Rihanna. Rihanna did not release an album for 9 years. 9 years of silence from one of the best-selling artists in history, and instead of fading, she became more famous. Fenty Beauty launched in 2017 and made history by offering 40 foundation shades at launch, something the beauty industry had ignored for decades. It generated over $500 million in its first year. Savage x Fenty turned lingerie shows into cultural events that network TV couldn't match. By the early 2020s, estimates put her net worth well past $1 billion, making her one of the wealthiest musicians ever recorded. Then the Super Bowl called. In February 2023, she stepped on that halftime stage, visibly pregnant, floated above the field, and reminded an entire generation what a real pop star looks like. The performance trended globally for weeks. It wasn't a comeback, it was a coronation, and she still hasn't dropped the album. And while Rihanna was building an empire in silence, the woman just above her was doing something even more extraordinary. She was rewriting the rules of what a veteran artist is allowed to do. Number 3, Beyonce. By 2020, most people would have said that Beyonce had already accomplished everything there was to accomplish. Multiple Grammys, visual albums that changed the format, a world tour that became a film, a legacy that was already bulletproof. And then she went further. Renaissance in 2022 was a celebration of black queer dance music, a genre that had shaped pop for decades but rarely been credited for it. Critics called it one of the best albums of the year. The tour that followed became one of the highest-grossing tours in history. Then Cowboy Carter arrived and pulled country music into the conversation in a way that unsettled an entire industry. The CMAs and country radio had complicated responses to a black woman claiming that space, and Beyoncé documented their discomfort through the art itself. She now holds the record for the most Grammy wins of any artist in history. The definition of a legacy artist used to mean someone who coasted on past success. Beyoncé has spent this decade making sure that definition no longer applies to her. The next person on this list built their legacy in a very different way. Not through decades of work, but through one single cultural moment that nobody saw coming. Number 2, Margot Robbie. Barbie made over $1.4 billion at the global box office. That sentence alone is remarkable. But what made Margot Robbie's run in this decade genuinely extraordinary is the context of that film. She wasn't just starring in it, she produced it. She brought it to Warner Brothers, fought for the creative vision, fought for Greta Gerwig to direct, and shepherded a movie about a plastic doll into one of the most culturally significant films of the 21st century. Before Barbie, she had already been recognized for I, Tonya and Bombshell, both landing her Oscar nominations. She built Lucky Chap Entertainment into one of the most interesting production companies in Hollywood. The Barbie era wasn't a lucky break. It was the result of someone who understood exactly how the industry worked and used that knowledge perfectly. Margot Robbie didn't wait to be cast in great movies, she made them herself. Which brings us to number 1, and this one might surprise you, because this person didn't just have a great decade, they ended it by winning the culture in real time. Number 1, Kendrick Lamar. In terms of pure artistic credibility, there was never really a debate. To Pimp a Butterfly is widely considered one of the greatest albums ever recorded, full stop. Damn made him the first non-classical, non-jazz musician to win a Pulitzer Prize. But what elevated Kendrick from respected artist to genuine cultural phenomenon was 2024. The beef with Drake wasn't just a rap battle, it was an ideological argument about what hip-hop is supposed to be, who gets to lead it, and what happens when commerce overtakes craft. Not Like Us became one of the most streamed diss tracks in history, and his performance of it at the Super Bowl halftime show in 2025 was a victory lap watched by hundreds of millions of people.